Picture yourself standing at the edge of your comfort zone, looking out at the vast expanse of life before you. We often find ourselves here, don't we? In this space between what we expected and what actually is. I want to talk to you today about something powerful, something transformative, the art of accepting what is. Not as a sign of defeat, but as your greatest source of strength. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I met someone who seemed to have it all figured out. Perfect career trajectory, relationship goals, all checked off, and that enviable 5-year plan that seemed bulletproof. Then life happened. The company restructured, the relationship ended, and that carefully crafted plan, it crumbled like a house of cards in a storm. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of breaking, they bent. Instead of fighting reality, they embraced it. And in that acceptance, they found something extraordinary. They found freedom. You see, we're all carrying around these invisible scripts in our heads. These stories about how things should be, must be, have to be. We grip these scripts so tightly our knuckles turn white, and our hearts grow heavy with the weight of unmet expectations. But what if I told you that your real power lies not in controlling every outcome, but in accepting what is while maintaining the courage to change what you can? Think about water for a moment. When it meets an obstacle, it doesn't stop flowing. It doesn't stand there demanding the rock move out of its way. It accepts what is and finds a new path. It flows around, over, or even through the obstacle. Water's strength isn't in its ability to break through everything. It's in its adaptability, its acceptance of reality while never losing its essential nature. But let's be real, acceptance isn't easy. It's not about throwing your hands up and saying, "Well, I guess this is my life now." It's about standing firmly in your truth and saying, "This is where I am, and from here, I can build something extraordinary." It's about understanding that acceptance isn't the enemy of change. It's the foundation of it. When you accept what is, you stop wasting energy fighting against reality. Think about how much mental and emotional energy you spend wishing things were different, replaying scenarios with different endings, or living in an imaginary future where everything aligns perfectly. Now, imagine channeling all that energy into working with reality instead of against it. You might be sitting there thinking, but isn't acceptance just giving up? I hear you, but consider this. When you're in quicksand, the more you struggle against it, the faster you sink. It's only when you accept your situation and work with it that you can find your way to solid ground. Acceptance isn't about resignation. It's about recognition. Recognition of what is, so you can clearly see what could be. Let's talk about the courage it takes to accept what is. Because make no mistake, it takes tremendous courage to look at your life exactly as it is, without filters, without excuses, without the comfortable blanket of denial. It takes courage to say, "This isn't what I planned, but this is where I am." It takes courage to let go of the story you thought you'd be living and embrace the story that's actually unfolding. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you find the courage to accept what is, you also find the strength to change what you can. Because acceptance clears away the fog of denial and resistance. It gives you a solid foundation to build from. It's like trying to navigate through a storm. You first need to accept that you're in a storm before you can plot course through it. Think about the relationships in your life. How many of them are strained because you're trying to change people who don't want to change? How much heartache comes from refusing to accept others as they are? When you accept people as they are, not as you wish they were, you free yourself. You free yourself from the exhausting task of trying to control the uncontrollable. The same applies to circumstances. That job that's not quite what you expected, that goal that's taking longer than planned, that life transition that caught you off guard. Accepting these realities doesn't mean you're settling. It means you're choosing to work with what is rather than exhausting yourself fighting against it. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack up a mountain. You can either spend your energy complaining about the weight, wishing it were lighter, or accept its weight and focus on strengthening yourself to carry it. Acceptance doesn't change the weight of the pack, but it changes your relationship with it. It transforms it from an unfair burden to a challenge you're willing to face. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you accept what is, you start to notice things you missed before. When you're no longer blinded by how things should be, you begin to see opportunities you never noticed. It's like finally putting down the map you've been stubbornly following and discovering that there are actually multiple paths to your destination. Consider the entrepreneurs who succeed not because everything went according to plan, but because they were willing to accept reality and adapt. The artists who created masterpieces not because they controlled every brushstroke, but because they worked with the unexpected. The leaders who inspired not because they never faced setbacks, but because they accepted challenges as part of the journey. Acceptance also gives you the gift of the present moment. When you're constantly fighting against what is, you're living in a hypothetical future or a regretted past. But acceptance anchors you in the now. And it's only in the now that you can actually make changes, take action, and create something new. Think about a garden. You can't grow flowers by forcing the seasons to change. You grow them by accepting the season you're in and working with it. If it's winter, you prepare the soil. If it's spring, you plant. If it's summer, you tend. If it's autumn, you harvest. Each season has its purpose, and fighting against it only leads to frustration. The same is true in your life. Each season, each circumstance, each challenge has something to teach you. But you can only learn the lesson when you accept that it's there to be learned. Resistance blocks growth. Acceptance invites it. Let's talk about failure for a moment. In our success-obsessed culture, failure is often seen as something to be avoided at all costs. But what if we accepted failure as part of the journey? Not as something to seek out, but as something that's naturally part of any worthwhile endeavor? When you accept that failure is possible, even likely, you free yourself to take bigger risks, to try new things, to step outside your comfort zone. Accepting what is also means accepting yourself as you are, not as you think you should be, not as others want you to be, but as you are right now. This doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't grow and change. It means that your growth comes from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-rejection. Think about it. How much of your stress comes from fighting against your natural rhythms, your authentic self, your true nature? What if you accepted your strengths and weaknesses? What if you accepted that you're not perfect and never will be? What if you accepted that that's perfectly okay? When you accept yourself, you stop trying to force yourself into molds that don't fit. You stop trying to be someone else's version of success. You start living authentically, and that authenticity becomes your greatest strength. But acceptance isn't just about the big things. It's about the small daily moments too. Accepting the traffic jam instead of raging against it. Accepting the rainy day instead of letting it ruin your mood. Accepting that sometimes things take longer than expected, that sometimes people disappoint us, that sometimes life throws us curveballs. And here's something powerful. When you practice acceptance in these small moments, you build the strength for the bigger challenges. It's like building a muscle. Each time you choose acceptance over resistance, you grow stronger. Each time you choose to work with reality rather than against it, you become more resilient. Remember this, acceptance doesn't mean you like everything that happens. It doesn't mean you approve of everything. It simply means you're willing to see things as they are, to acknowledge reality as it is, so you can respond effectively rather than react blindly. Think of acceptance as clearing the fog from your windshield. You might not like the road ahead, but at least you can see it clearly. And when you can see clearly, you can navigate more effectively. You can make better decisions. You can choose your path with wisdom rather than wishful thinking. As we wrap up, I want you to consider this. What might change in your life if you started accepting what is? What energy might be freed up? What opportunities might you notice? What strength might you discover? Because here's the truth. Acceptance isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning. It's not about giving up on your dreams. It's about building them on the foundation of reality rather than illusion. It's about having the courage to see things as they are and the wisdom to work with reality rather than against it. So I challenge you today, start practicing acceptance. Start small if you need to. Accept the weather, accept the traffic, accept that some things are beyond your control. Then gradually work your way up to accepting bigger challenges, bigger changes, bigger truths. Remember, accepting what is doesn't mean you can't work for change. It means you're choosing to work from a place of clear seeing rather than denial, from a place of wisdom rather than wishful thinking. It means you're choosing to use your energy to create rather than resist. Your life is happening right now in this moment. Not in the future you're planning, not in the past you're replaying, but right here, right now. Accept it. Embrace it. Work with it. Because when you accept what is, you open yourself to what could be. And that's where the magic happens. This is your moment. This is your life. Accept it fully. Live it authentically. And watch as acceptance transforms into your greatest strength, your deepest wisdom, and your path to true freedom. The power to change your life begins with accepting where you are right now. Take that first step. The journey of acceptance begins today.